Dust whispered across the empty plains of Virel 7, a forgotten world where wind howled like the dying breath of a god. Broken towers jutted from the crust like the bones of a buried civilization. Once a colony brimming with life, now it was only silence, and the Ash. John trudged through the wasteland, his boots sinking slightly into gray soil with each step. A heavy exocloak flapped around him in the gusts, its edges singed from past fires. His visor, streaked with dust, flickered with data. Radiation levels low, oxygen pockets scarce, life signs ... 0. Again, his fingers brushed the side of his helmet, activating the voice log. Bay 192, he muttered, his voice dry. Still no contact, no signals, no signs of survivors. I'm starting to think I'm the only soul left on this world. He paused, glancing up at the pale green sky. Or maybe the only one foolish enough to stay. Behind him, a trail of footprints stretched toward the ruins of what had once been called a station. Now it was a rusted skeleton, half swallowed by sand. He had searched the outpost thoroughly. No food, no water, just shattered glass and the occasional flicker of old security feeds showing shadows that shouldn't have moved. Today, though, something had changed. The wind carried a scent, old, acrid, almost metallic. A scent that didn't belong to storms or decay. It came from the east, beyond the Rift Valley. And there on the horizon was something new. A jagged mound of black stone, half hidden by swirling ash. A cave. John stopped at its entrance. The rock around the mouth was scorched, melted in places as though touched by heat far beyond anything natural. He could feel it, a pressure in the air, the kind that prickled your skin and made your teeth ache. He hesitated. Then he stepped inside. The cave swallowed the light. He activated his shoulder lamp, a dull white beam that barely pushed back the darkness. The walls were covered in markings, not human, not any alien script he recognized. Symbols carved with claws or fire, shapes that made his stomach twist. When he looked at them too long, deeper and deeper he went, the tunnel spiraling downward. The silence became heavier, thicker, almost oily. His breathing slowed. And then the ground trembled, just a pulse. Then again, a sound like breathing. A crimson glow flared in the darkness ahead. Eyes, huge, fixed on him. Slitted and inhuman. Froze. The shape that emerged was vast, too large to comprehend in the narrow space. Its body slithered across the rock like liquid obsidian, plated with scales that shimmered like charred steel. Horns curled from its head. Its mouth was a black maw, filled with rows of translucent, jagged teeth. And behind those glowing red eyes was something ancient, something aware. The creature exhaled, and the cave walls shook. Heat rose in a wave, warping John's vision. His pulse thundered in his ears. He had found something in this dead world. Or maybe it had been waiting for him. The sun was a pale, cold disk in the bruised sky, casting long shadows over the skeletal ruins of a forgotten world. John moved silently through the remnants of a city that once breathed with life, now nothing more than scorched bones of concrete and rusted steel. A dusty wind swept through the hollow streets, whispering secrets in a language only ghosts understood. Every step he took stirred the ash on the ground. Cars lay overturned, windows shattered, their insides gutted by time or something far worse. A playground sat in eerie stillness. A rusted swing creaked gently back and forth as though an unseen child still played. John's boots crunched over broken glass and scattered debris, his hand resting on the worn handle of the plasma cutter strapped to his hip, a weapon. A tool, a last resort. He was searching. Not for people, he had long given up hope on that. He searched for signals, signs, answers, anything that could explain what happened to Earth. Cities were vaporized or rotted into silence. Animals were gone. The forests had turned black with decay. Even the stars above seemed dimmer. Today, however, the signal was strong. From his backpack, the handheld scanner pulsed a low, rhythmic beep. A red dot flickered on its cracked screen, marking a location a few kilometers east of the dead city. It was a small anomaly, almost imperceptible. But John had learned that in a dead world, even whispers mattered. He followed the trail past a dried-up riverbed and into a gorge carved by time and collapse. The rock formations here were unnatural almost, like they'd been melted, twisted. Spires rose around him, and strange claw marks etched into stone became more frequent. The air grew thick with silence. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of his boots and the ever-closer signal's beep. Then he saw a dot at the base of a jagged cliff. Half covered in dirt and vines was a cave mouth jagged like a torn wound in the earth. The rock around it was blackened, as if scorched by fire long ago. The signal pulsed violently now, urgent, as if begging him to turn back. John hesitated. Something primal screamed at him to leave. But curiosity, or perhaps a deeper, darker instinct, overrode it. He flicked on his headlamp. A narrow beam of light cut into the darkness, revealing stone walls covered in strange markings. They weren't human. They weren't any known language. They felt alive. He stepped inside. The cave sloped downward, and the air grew colder, damper. His breath fogged. The light trembled as he descended. Faint noises began to rise from deeper in the earth-distant rumbles, like a massive creature. Breathing in its sleep. Then, without warning, the cave opened up. A colossal chamber stretched before him. The walls glistened with a crimson sheen, as if the stone itself bled light. At the center of the cavern, surrounded by broken statues and bones, lay something impossible. A creature. It was curled like a sleeping dragon, its scales like obsidian. Armor, wings folded tight against its back. The air trembled around it with raw heat. But it was the eyes that paralyzed him. Though closed, they glowed faintly red beneath their lids, pulsing like embers waiting to ignite. John took a step back, his heart hammering. A low growl echoed through the chamber. The eyes opened. Twin beacons of searing, red light locked onto him. Not mindless rage, but ancient intelligence filled the stare. The ground vibrated with a rising rumble. The creature's chest expanded with a slow, deep breath, one that smelled like burning worlds and forgotten suns. John raised his weapon, but part of him knew this was not a beast he could kill. This was something ancient, something awakened, something hungry. Asterisk. The wind howled like a mournful specter as John pressed forward. The gray sun hanging low and distant in the sky, casting long, trembling shadows across the skeletal remains of a world long lost. Crumbling towers leaned against each other like the broken teeth of ancient giants, and the ground was littered with twisted metal, dried bloodstains, and fragments of forgotten technology. Each step John took crunched over the silence of the dead. His breath misted before him, though the air wasn't cold. It was thin, lifeless, as if the very oxygen had given up trying. A small device on his wrist blinked faintly, its signal flickering like a dying heartbeat. It was leading him southeast, into a stretch of land the pre-apocalypse maps called the Hollow Barrens. And somewhere in the middle of that bleak, cracked earth, a strange fissure yawned open, a natural cave system newly exposed by tectonic shifts. It was the first unfamiliar thing he'd seen in weeks. As he neared the fissure, the winds grew, quieter, as if even nature feared what slumbered below. The rocks around the cave mouth were scorched and blackened, as though something hot and ancient had exhaled upon them. John's eyes narrowed, scanning the area. No movement. No animals. No insects. not even the twitch of dead leaves. He stood at the edge of the cavern, peering into the darkness that seemed to drink in the fading light behind him. Something in his chest clenched. The silence inside was different, not just the absence of sound, but the presence of something listening. A pressure, a presence. Still, he descended. His boots crunched on dry gravel as he slid into the cavern's throat. The walls were slick with condensation, though there was no source of moisture. His flashlight cast trembling beams across jagged stone, and every now and then he caught sight of strange claw marks, deep gouges that looked too deliberate, too clean to be natural erosion. Then came the whispers. At first, they were barely noticeable, like the wind brushing past his ears. But they grew louder the deeper he went. Not in volume, but in clarity. They sounded like voices. His voice. John. He stopped cold. The flashlight beam trembled slightly in his hand. The name echoed again, this time from behind. He spun. Around. Nothing. Just the cave breathing. He pressed on, nerves tight. The tunnel began to widen, sloping downward into what looked like a natural amphitheater. The stone here had a sheen, as if polished by time or something far older. The air had turned thick and metallic, each inhale like swallowing rust. And then he saw it. At the heart of the chamber, coiled atop a mound of bones, human, animal, unrecognizable, lay the creature. Its body was massive, the color of scorched obsidian. Its skin shimmered slightly, not with light, but with movement, like something pulsing beneath the surface. Great wings, leathery and cracked, folded against its sides like relics of a forgotten age. But it was the eyes that locked him in place, massive, glowing orbs of red light, not just reflecting, but emitting a fire from within. It did not move. It did not need to. John's entire body screamed to run, but he stood frozen, breath shallow. Then the creature's head tilted slightly, curious, almost human. You are. The last it spoke, not with sound, but into his mind. The words slithered across his thoughts, oily and cold. You smell. Old, broken. John stepped back, raising his rifle, a laughable gesture in the face of something so titanic. What are you? He managed to whisper. The beast's lips did not move, but the air vibrated with its answer. I am hunger. I am memory. I was made to end, and I have not yet finished. Then its eyes narrowed. And now you have woken me. The ground beneath. John quaked. The mound of bones shifted. The air turned to fire. And the silence of the dead world shattered. Asterisk. The cavern's breath hit John like a furnace as the creature's words echoed in his mind, leaving a cold trail that wrapped tightly around his spine. The air shimmered, thickening with an unseen weight, and the walls themselves seemed to pulse with ancient power. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, yet, rooted to the spot by dread and awe, John remained. The great beast's eyes narrowed, like smoldering coals, fixed upon him with an intelligence far older than humanity. The creature was no mere animal. It was a relic of a forgotten epoch, born of the planet's own blood and fury. Suddenly, the creature unfurled one vast wing. The leathery membrane stretched taut, catching the faint glow of the crystals embedded in the cavern walls. A wave of heat surged forward, forcing John to stagger back. The shadows flickered and danced in the flickering light, revealing walls etched with glyphs, swirling patterns that writhed and shimmered like living tattoos across the stone. John swallowed his rising panic and let his eyes trace the carvings. They told a story, a chronicle of a time when titans ruled beneath the surface, when the planet itself breathed fire and rage through them. The beast here, it seemed, was the last survivor of those ancient gods. A sentinel or a destroyer. John wasn't sure which. As his gaze fell downward, he noticed a narrow passage, partially concealed behind a curtain of jagged rock. His heart pounded. It was an escape route, or perhaps a path deeper into the thin labyrinth where secrets waited. The creature's eyes flicked toward the passage. A low rumble vibrated through the cavern, as if it acknowledged the choice. John didn't hesitate. The air grew colder as he slipped through the narrow opening, the flickering light from his headlamp barely penetrating the thick darkness ahead. The walls here were damp and slick, adorned with the same glowing glyphs, pulsing faintly beneath his touch like a heartbeat of the earth itself. The tunnel twisted and descended, the silence broken only by the steady drip of water echoing in. The distance. His breath formed clouds, each exhale a reminder of the thinning oxygen. Every step deeper felt like sinking into the planet's very soul. Suddenly, a faint vibration ran through the rock beneath his feet, growing stronger with each heartbeat. The whispers returned, not voices this time, but something older. A low, guttural chant that seemed to come from the walls themselves, wrapping around his mind, fraying the edges of his sanity. John clenched his jaw and pushed forward, weight of unseen eyes pressing from all sides. At the end of the tunnel, he found a vast chamber filled with strange machinery, half swallowed by stone and roots. In the center, a crystalline orb pulsated with red light, casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. Approaching cautiously, John reached out to touch the orb. A surge of energy shot through him, flooding his mind with fragmented visions. A world aflame, ancient beings rising, and a desperate war to bind the creature beneath the surface. The orb's light dimmed, but the whispers only grew louder, warning him that the slumbering god was stirring faster than anticipated. John realized with a chill that the fate of this dead world, and perhaps his own survival, depended on what he would do next. Behind him, somewhere far above, the cavern began to tremble once more. John's fingertips tingled as they hovered over the crystalline orb, its pulsating red light casting eerie shadows on the cavern walls that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. The fragmented visions that surged through his mind were raw and disorienting, flashes of fire consuming entire landscapes, towering beings carved from molten rock, and a desperate struggle etched into the very fabric of the planet's memory. He staggered back, his breath coming in shallow gasps, the weight of revelation settling like ash. In his chest, the chamber around him was a relic of an ancient civilization long lost to time and ruin. Machines, covered in layers of dust and creeping. Vines hummed faintly, as if awakening from a centuries-long slumber. The orb's crimson glow revealed intricate carvings and symbols etched into the metal. Warnings and prayers interwoven with technological marvels, beyond John's comprehension. A low rumble shook the chamber. The ground beneath his boots trembled, as if the planet itself exhaled a deep, resonant sigh. Somewhere above, the massive beast stirred. John swallowed his fear and forced himself to focus. The visions had shown him the stakes. This creature, this god beneath the earth, was the culmination of a catastrophic experiment, a guardian turned destroyer, born from desperation and hubris. Its awakening threatened to consume everything in its path. The orb's light flared violently, illuminating a narrow passageway leading deeper into the subterranean maze. Against every instinct screaming at him to flee, John stepped forward, drawn by a force both terrifying and compelling. His footsteps echoed through the hollow tunnels as he descended further into darkness, the orb's light casting flickering shadows that danced like specters along the rough stone walls. As he ventured deeper, the whispers returned, not fragmented, now but coherent, a chorus of voices urging him onward and warning of the peril that lay ahead. The air grew hotter, thick with the scent of sulfur and scorched earth. Sweat beaded on John's brow as he pressed on, muscles tense and senses heightened. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern, illuminated by rivers of molten lava that snaked through the rock like glowing veins. At the center of the chamber lay the beast, colossal and coiled, its scales shimmering like black glass fractured by veins of molten fire. Its chest rose and fell with slow, powerful breaths, each exhale sending waves of heat that rippled through the air. John's gaze locked onto the creature's eyes, closed, yet faintly glowing embers beneath their lids hinted at the immense power contained within. The beast was both magnificent and horrifying, a living testament to the planet's violent history. A sudden crack echoed through the cavern as the creature's eyes snapped open, blazing with an unholy red light that pierced the darkness like twin suns. The beast's roar thundered through the chamber, a sound that shook the very foundations of the world and sent shards of stone raining from the ceiling. John stumbled back, heart pounding, as the cavern began to collapse around him. Dust and debris filled the air, choking and blinding, but the primal terror that surged through his veins sharpened his resolve. There was no turning back. The ancient god had awakened Dot, and the dance of survival had begun. The deafening roar faded into a low, menacing growl that seemed to reverberate through the very bones of the planet. John's lungs burned as he sprinted through the collapsing cavern, jagged rocks raining from the shattered ceiling, their impact shaking the ground beneath his boots. Every step was a gamble between survival and oblivion. Behind him, the colossal beast Varzul uncoiled its massive form, scales clinking like shattered obsidian plates grinding against stone. Its crimson eyes blazed with unyielding fury, casting hellish light onto the cavern walls as it pursued him with terrifying deliberation. Each thunderous step sent shockwaves through the labyrinthine tunnels, the sound echoing like a death knell. John's mind raced, instincts honed by years of combat guiding him through the twisting maze. The labyrinth had become a weapon in his hands, each corner, each shadow, a calculated chance to evade the creature's wrath. He darted past ancient machinery, the rusted remnants of the old world flickering faintly to life under his touch, their fractured lights barely illuminating the path ahead. Dot, the acrid scent of burning rock and stale air choked his throat as he pressed forward. The walls themselves seemed to close in, the oppressive silence between roars broken only by his ragged breaths and the relentless pounding of his pursuer. His fingers grazed a control panel embedded in the cavern wall, flicking switches in desperate hope. With a grinding roar, a hidden gate slid open, revealing a narrow crevice just wide enough for a man, but not for the beast. John dove through the opening, the rough stone scraping his skin as he rolled to his feet on the other side. Behind him, Varzul lashed its massive tail in frustration, the force shattering stalactites and sending clouds of dust swirling. Dot in the relative safety of the crevice. John paused, heart hammering, sweat stinging his eyes. His mind reeled not from fear alone, but from the dawning realization that this ancient creature was more than a mindless predator. It was a god of destruction, awakened from a slumber spanning millennia, and it would not be easily sated. The faint glow of the crystals embedded in the walls illuminated a path descending deeper into the earth. John knew he couldn't outrun Varzul forever. His only hope lay in uncovering the secrets buried in this forgotten labyrinth, secrets that might hold the key to stopping the monster before the world itself crumbled beneath its wrath. Stealing himself, John pressed onward, the echoes of his footsteps swallowed by the cavern's endless dark, and the burning red eyes that watched, always watching. From the shadows behind, the winding tunnels beneath the planet's scarred surface stretched endlessly before John, a twisting web of stone and shadow that seemed to pulse with an ancient heartbeat. His boots echoed faintly against the damp walls, each step a fragile defiance against the encroaching darkness. The air was thick, stifling with the scent of earth, decay, and something far older, the lingering breath of Varzul. John's pulse hammered in his ears as he pressed deeper into the labyrinth, guided by the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi. Clinging to the walls, they cast a sickly green light that barely pierced the oppressive gloom. Somewhere far behind him, the distant rumble of the beast's pursuit echoed, a relentless reminder of the predator stalking his every move. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, cavernous and eerie. The ceiling arched high above, lost in darkness, dripping with stalactites sharp as daggers. At the chamber's center stood a colossal obelisk, carved from black stone veined with glowing red fissures. It thrummed with power-raw, ancient energy that vibrated through John's bones as he approached. The air around the obelisk shimmered, and the whispers returned, voices not heard but felt, resonating deep within his mind. They spoke of sacrifice and salvation, of a prison forged in fire and blood to bind the monstrous god beneath the earth. John reached out, fingers trembling, and placed his hand on the cold surface. The stone pulsed, and visions flooded his consciousness. The original settlers, desperate and terrified, crafting the chains that would hold Varzal, the god's wrath unleashed upon the world. The ultimate cost of their triumph, but the visions also revealed a truth more terrifying than the creature. Itself, the prison was failing. A sudden quake shook the chamber, dust and debris cascading from above. John staggered back as the obelisk's glow intensified, red light spilling like molten lava, illuminating carvings of a ritual lost to time. His eyes caught a panel of ancient symbols beneath the stone coordinates, instructions, warnings. He scanned the glyphs, piecing together a plan. To rebind Varzil, he would have to reactivate the prison's core, a fusion of ancient technology and arcane power buried deeper within the labyrinth. But it required a sacrifice. The core demanded a conduit, a living soul to channel its energy. John swallowed hard, the weight of his fate settling heavy on his shoulders. There was no turning back. Behind him, a low growl rumbled through the tunnels. The beast was near, its fury mounting. Time was running out. With grim determination, John tore his gaze from the obelisk and plunged into the darkness beyond. The air grew heavy, carrying him closer to the heart of the labyrinth, into the labyrinth's destiny core, written the faint hum of ancient machinery growing louder with every step. The walls narrowed, enclosing him in a suffocating embrace of stone, etched with glowing crimson runes that pulsed like the very heartbeat of the planet. Each symbol seemed to writhe under his gaze, a living script warning of doom and sacrifice. His breath came ragged, the weight of exhaustion settling into his bones. The distant roar of Varzul echoed through the tunnels, a relentless reminder that the monstrous god was awakening faster than he had anticipated. Time slipped away like grains of ash in the wind. Ahead, the passage opened into a vast chamber, the Crucible. At its center stood a towering monolith of dark metal, covered in intricate circuitry fused with alien glyphs. The structure radiated a fierce energy that made the hairs on John's arms stand on end. Surrounding it, a network of cables and conduits snaked across the floor and walls, pulsing with a dangerous life of their own. John approached cautiously, the glow from his helmet casting stark shadows that danced across the cavernous space. He knelt beside a control panel, fingers trembling as he traced the faded inscriptions. The interface was ancient, but still responsive, a relic of a civilization whose knowledge had transcended millennia. The sacrifice protocol, the core's power source, required activation. To channel its energy, John had to become the conduit, binding his life force to the prison's failing seals. The thought sent a chill down his spine, but there was no alternative. If Varzul broke free, all life above would be consumed in a fiery apocalypse. With a steadying breath, John initiated the sequence. The chamber trembled as the monolith roared to life, energy crackling like a storm trapped in metal. The glowing runes flared, casting a blood-red light that bathed the room in a hellish glow. Pain blossomed in his chest as the power surged through him, a wildfire of energy that threatened to consume his very essence. His vision blurred, memories, and voices flooding his mind, echoes of those who had come before, their sacrifices etched into the core's consciousness. Outside, the earth shook violently. The beast's furious roar shattered the cavern walls, as Varzul clawed desperately against its bindings. The ancient chains sparked and strained, threatening to snap. John gritted his teeth, focusing on the task. Every fiber of his being burned with the weight of the sacrifice, but he pushed on, binding his soul to the failing prison. Minutes stretched like hours as the ritual reached its crescendo. Then, with a deafening crack, the chains blazed to life, their fiery glow spreading through the labyrinth, sealing the monstrous god once more. Exhausted beyond measure, John collapsed to his knees as silence returned, heavy, absolute, and complete. But deep beneath the surface, a faint ember of red light flickered in the darkness, refusing to be snuffed out. Asterisk pain radiated through John's body, mingling with a deep exhaustion that threatened to consume both flesh and spirit. Kneeling in the heart of the labyrinth's shadowed chamber, his breath came ragged and shallow, each inhale burning like fire. The energy coursing through him was both a gift and a curse, fueling his strength, yet slowly tearing at the seams. Of his being out above, the earth trembled with fury. Varzul raged against its chains, its monstrous roars reverberating through the caverns, shaking loose fragments of stone that rained down like deadly hail. Yet John knew, instinctively, that this battle was far from over. The glowing chains held for now, but their fiery glow flickered and waned, weakening with every heartbeat. A faint light caught John's weary eyes from the corner of the chamber. Pale and pulsating, it emanated from a dormant capsule, half buried beneath centuries of dust and rusted metal. Moving with deliberate effort, John dragged himself toward the strange relic. His footsteps echoed hollowly in the vast, oppressive silence. Inside the translucent shell lay a figure, human in shape, but ethereal, almost luminous. The being's chest rose and fell gently, breathing life into the cold metal coffin. Ancient. Warning glyphs flickered weakly on nearby screens. Do not awaken. Danger imminent. John's mind raced. Could this sleeper be the key to renewing the prison's power? Or was it another ancient curse, waiting to unleash yet more destruction? His hand trembled as he reached out, fingers grazing the capsules. Surface. The soft hum of the machinery surged, and with a hiss, the capsule began to unlock. A breath deep, resonant, and filled with power escaped from within. The chamber filled with an eerie stillness, broken only by the slow rise of life inside the cocoon. John stepped back, heart pounding, knowing that whatever emerged would tip the fragile balance between salvation and ruin. Asterisk, the chamber fell into. A heavy silence as the capsule's surface hissed and shimmered, fragments of its protective shell dissolving into the stale air. John's eyes never left the emerging figure. A woman, radiant yet fragile, stepping slowly into the dim crimson light that bathed the labyrinth's heart. Her skin seemed to shimmer with a faint, otherworldly glow, delicate scales tracing along her arms and collarbone like the faintest constellation. Her eyes, a piercing silver, locked onto John's with an intensity that betrayed lifetimes of knowledge and sorrow. For a moment, time itself seemed to hesitate. She inhaled deeply, as if tasting the stale air of the ruined world for the first time. And then her gaze swept the chamber, the dying chains, the ancient obelisk, and finally, the wearied soldier before her. "I am Sophia," she whispered, voice soft yet unwavering, carrying the weight of forgotten ages. "I was bound here, long ago, to guard the prison and to guide the one who would come." John swallowed hard, every instinct screaming that this was no ordinary savior. Her presence was a balm and a warning. Varzul stirs, she continued, her eyes narrowing. The chains weaken. We have little time. He nodded, struggling to process the enormity of the moment. I've been fighting to hold it back, but I'm running out of time and strength. Sophia stepped forward, her fingers trailing over. The glowing runes etched into the monolith. Together, we can renew the prison's power. But it will cost everything. John met her gaze, a silent promise exchanged between two souls bound by fate. As they prepared to face the monstrous god once more, the labyrinth trembled beneath them, the final battle looming like a storm on the horizon. Outside, Varzul's roar shattered the silence, echoing through the shattered depths, a reminder that the crucible of fire was far from over. The air inside the labyrinth crackled with an electric tension, thick and suffocating, as John and Sophia stood side by side before the monolith. The crimson runes flared brighter, their ancient light reflecting in Sophia's silver eyes, which now gleamed with newfound purpose. The silence between them was heavy, laden with the unspoken knowledge that what awaited was no longer a battle of brute strength, but a war of wills, sacrifice, and relentless endurance. Sophia's voice was steady, but laced with urgency. The core requires more than energy. It demands unity. Your life force, my essence, they must intertwine. Only then can the prison be reforged. John nodded grimly, already feeling the toll of the power surging within him. His body ached, every muscle trembling under the strain. Yet, beneath the fatigue, a fierce determination ignited. He would not let this world fall to ruin. They began the ritual. Sophia extended her hands toward the monolith, tracing glowing sigils in the air. The runes pulsed in response, their fiery glow spreading like veins through the chamber's stone and metal. John stepped forward, placing his palms against hers, feeling a surge of warmth, an almost painful connection that bound their very souls. Visions flooded his mind, endless flames consuming cities, desperate faces reaching out from the ashes. The primordial battle that had birthed Varzul, but intertwined with the despair were sparks of hope's sacrifices made, chains reforged, and the unyielding will to protect life itself shook violently as a deafening roar shattered the fragile calm. Varzuri was palpable, its red eyes blazing from the depths, relentless in its desire to break free. John gritted his teeth, focusing through the pain. The ritual's energy coursed through him and Sophia, intertwining their strengths, forging an unbreakable bond. The monolith blazed with searing light, ancient chains weaving through the air like threads of molten metal. With a final surge, the power snapped outward, encasing the beast in a cage of brilliant fire and shimmering energy. Varzul's roar twisted into a strangled growl as the chains tightened, binding it once more beneath the earth. As silence settled over the labyrinth, John collapsed, drained but victorious. Sophia's hand found his, her touch steady and reassuring. "The prison holds, for now," she whispered. But vigilance must never wane. Together, they rose, two souls forever bound by sacrifice and the shadows of a world saved from ruin. The first fragile rays of dawn seeped through the cracks of the shattered cavern, casting long, trembling shadows over the still glowing chains that imprisoned Varzul. The oppressive heat that had suffocated the labyrinth for so long began to ease, replaced by a chilling calm that seemed almost unnatural after the chaos. John lay on the cold stone floor, every breath a battle against exhaustion. His body felt hollowed out, emptied by the ritual's unrelenting demands. Beside him, Sophia knelt, her luminous form casting a gentle silver glow in the dim light. The faint scars of their shared sacrifice lingered between them, invisible yet indelible. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was thick with the weight of what they had endured, and what still lingered beneath the surface. Sophia's voice, when it came, was soft but resolute. The chains hold, but the world is changed. The price we paid will echo through generations. John forced a weak smile. We stopped the end ... for now. But something tells me this piece is just the eye of a greater storm. She reached out, her hand warm against his cheek. Hope is a fragile ember, John. It is our duty to nurture it, to ensure the darkness never consumes this world again. Together, they rose, stepping toward the cavern's entrance, where the pale light of a new day awaited. Outside, the once blighted landscape was eerily silent. A scarred reminder of devastation and resilience intertwined as they emerged. The sky stretched vast and open, a canvas of possibilities painted with the faintest blush of dawn. John took a deep breath, feeling the weight of survival settle alongside a cautious hope. Behind them, deep beneath the earth, Varzil's red eyes flickered once, faint, distant, but never fully extinguished. The fight was over, but the story was just beginning.